So for starters, let's talk about these sort of mantras right here. Permafrost Prison, Shadow Vortex, Flame Sentinel, Meadow Turret, and Storm Cage. I think off rip, easiest thing they could do, give all these ritual casts. No joke, ritual casts. Now before I delve into it, I know the first thing that people will always say, right, off rip is, hey Agamotto, why don't they just get rework? Why don't they just rework Permafrost Prison? Why don't they just rework Shadow Vortex? Why don't they just rework it? Guys, look.
When was the NOK rework? That's all I got to say. When was the NOK rework?
2 years ago. 2 years ago. That was when, remember that? The NOK rework? That's all I gotta say. That's all I gotta say. I would love a rework on these mantras. But look, this is the way I view it. There's extremely problematic mantras in the game that kind of play against how the average player would naturally play when they first join in, right? Take a look at everyone from verse 1, right? These mantras are like they're very like anti-Deepwoken. You see what I'm saying, right? They're anti-Deepwoken, right? In my opinion. And so I think I thought about it. Someone suggested ritual casting for him, and I was like, wait a minute, that would be a very easy way to at least apply a pretty big nerf on these mantras. And so the idea is that if you have a very super big, super long lasting permafrost prison or super large shadow vortex, you have to cast like 15 keys to cast it. Now there's a real downside to actually having those modifiers. Be real, chat. If you're running those mantras, you are never not running the largest, most maximum modifiers possible, right? And it doesn't make sense. Those builds will always have the ether to use those mantras. It's the nature of ganks. It's the nature of the game, right? They're built towards being able to use those mantras a ton. Now there is a legitimate, and it makes sense. It's like an ultimate mantra, right? It's such a it breaks Deepwoken, right? A unparryable, undodgeable mantra if you get caught in the AoE, a giant domain expansion type mantra, and all it takes is 220 ether. Come on, people running blue gem, what is it called? Neuroplasticity. And so now instead, the idea is that you can at least have a bit of counterplay, because if you hit somebody with a ritual cast, it resets their ritual cast. I've tried this, and it's hard to. What I would do is I would know, because back then Mind Soothe, I had the largest Mind Soothe possible, and it was like 12 or 13 keys, and I would have to press all of them in a row. If I got hit once, it reset, and it was really difficult to get the Mind Soothes off, because I would try running away, casting the Mind Soothe, but they would keep interrupting. And so I'd have to be really smart about how I'd get my Mind Soothes in, which made it not really good mantra to use, to be honest. It was very difficult to use in ganks, right? And honestly, I probably should have just used like a smaller version of it, all right? But I think this is a very simple way to immediately balance out these mantras, at least a little bit, especially in Chime, right? You know, in a 1v1 setting, guess what? And here's the thing too, right? If you have a ritual cast, Vision Shaper clones cannot use the mantra. They can't. So immediately, Vision Shaper clones can no longer use Permafrost, Shadow Vortex, Flame Sentinel, Metal. Yep, also honor. Considering that as well, right? So ritual cast, clones can't use them. And on top of that, if you're in a 1v1 scenario, they can't pull it off unless they run away. And at that point, there's already such a big distance between you, it's going to be very hard to get that Shadow Vortex off. And so that would be the idea, right? Because there's a lot of scenarios where somebody will use Shadow Vortex as like the storm is closing. Now, guess what? If you're up on a motherfucker and wanting them, they can't get that damn big ass Shadow Vortex off. And if they want to use a smaller Shadow Vortex, sure, they can use it, but it's not going to be as big and as effective. So now there's a little bit more thought that goes into just using these mantras. Instead of, like, think about it, right? Like, people are just throwing out these cheesy-ass mantras. Now there's going to be a lot more thought put behind it. And in my opinion, I think it's, like, the simplest way to nerf them. Yeah, I know there can be reworks, or they can change up, or they can make the Shadow Vortex. You can break the Shadow Vortex. Dog. At the end of the day, you have to realize that the people using these mantras are always going to be using them on builds that confirm it. Does that make sense, chat? Whenever you run into a person using Shadow Vortex, they aren't, like, a regular Shadow user. No, they are a build catered toward getting the maximum value out of that mantra, and it is very easy for them to use it in that scenario and get so much value out of it because it's easy to use. Now basically it makes it a lot more difficult for these cheese builds to actually have a lot of value. A real mage doesn't hold S, he just runs around and spams AoE range. Yeah, like I said, hopefully this also just like a lot of mage related things. I know there's still gonna be some stuff that is like kind of magey and still pretty powerful, like potential maybe like Iron Sing mages and shit that you have to deal with. Or like people using like Flame Eruption and shit, like the giant ass fan that flames. Flame Eruption does like a shit ton of damage. I know there's a lot of that still in the game. And I do think that honestly, chat, if they really want to, they deadass could just make it a universal rule that the higher the size modifier is on something, the less damage it does. I don't know, that might not be a bad idea, because that's already a thing on a couple of mantras. See, not all mantras, only a few, right? For example, Stormblades does less damage the larger it is, right? But I think honestly that would be a pretty good rule for every mantra, because you have things like Flame Eruption doing the same damage as like the baby small one, but like literally 6-7 times bigger. So I don't know, maybe I'll ask about something like that being a thing where like just a general rule of thumb where if you have a larger mantra, it does a fair bit less damage. I'm thinking at most, if you have like 4 Stratus, 4 Clouds compared to 0, it does like 50% less damage. I think that would be a fair compromise. You have a much super easy to land, very big mantra, but it does half damage. I think that's appropriate. I don't know, chat. What do y'all think, man? Give me your thoughts. Give me your thoughts about it. Yeah, like I think that's like a very simple way to nerf a bunch of mages, because a lot of mages do rely on those size modifiers specifically. And why would something bigger do less damage? It's a downside, dude. Think about like this, Wallet Warrior. Let's just take like a fire pump for example. Because the fire is more concentrated in a short amount of area compared to a large area, it does more damage. You see what I'm saying?
If y'all enjoyed the video, make sure to go click on these other videos, man, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.